Mr. Fox, you're accused of violating the conditions of your parole, specifically condition number 13, which was a special condition. Abide by sex offender contract and have no contact with juveniles, in that it is alleged that you violated condition number 13 in that on July 17, 2023, you were located at a residence with 3 juveniles, ages 5, 9, and 11 months. After completing intake and being instructed numerous times to have no contact with juveniles earlier that day. How do you plead to violating condition number 13?
I guess.
Right? Mrs. Jackson.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Fox.
That's not.
You were paroled on June 14th, is that correct?
You mean I was released?
Yeah, you were paroled on June 14th of this year.
I was released on the 13th.
Well, okay, we're not gonna quibble over a day, okay?
That's my.
Okay. And when did you report to probation and parole for your intake after you were released?
I was released on the 13th. I went to probation and parole on the 14th. They told me to come back up to probation and parole on the 17th.
And did you do that? Did you go back on the 17th?
I went on 17th at 7:30. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what happened when you went on the 17th?
I went in front of Lane Norman. He gave me my paperwork, and he was giving me the conditions of my parole. With the conditions of my parole, I was telling him that I was trying to be around my daughter and stuff like that, and he told me that I couldn't be around. He told me I couldn't be around any kids first. And I told him I had a daughter. He was like, "Well, sign, get the paperwork from the child's mom, and they'll bring it in front of the board." So I was like, "Okay." I didn't think that.
Okay, can I stop you for a moment?
Yes, ma'am.
What was your approved residence when you were released and you went to probation and parole? You had to give them an approved residence.
Yes, ma'am.
And what residence did you give as your place of contact?
200.
And who lives on Knight Street?
My great grandmother.
And who lives with your great grandmother?
Just me and her.
Okay, so that was where you were scheduled to live.
Yes, ma'am.
But on the did you get arrested or detained on the 17th? What day did you actually get arrested?
I got arrested on the 17th, the same day I went to see him.
Okay, you had gone to done the intake on the 17th.
Yeah.
Conditions gone over with you. So where did you go after you left probation and parole?
I went to the sex offender clinic. I went to sex offender to go report for the registration, the sex offender thing, and I went to a restaurant for seeking a job. And my mom had an accident because she was my ride. Now she stopped at my grandmother's house to change, and that's how I ended up being at my grandmother's house. I was outside waiting for her so I can go to APD.
Okay. Okay, I'm confused. You were going to be living with your great grandmother or your grandmother?
My great grandmother.
Okay. Your mother ended up at your grandmother's.
Yes,
and
ma'am.
why was she, and you were in the car because she was your transportation to
Yes,
go
ma'am.
to probation, parole, go to sex offender registration and all of that, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And so tell me what happened that brought her to your grandmother's house.
She went to my grandmother's house to handle some business there. She wasn't going to be long. So I stayed outside and I talked to my brother, and I got a call from my grandmother saying that my great grandmother saying that my parole officer had stopped by.
Okay. Okay, so who lives at your grandmother's house?
Her, my little brother, her husband, and I'm thinking that's it. I'm not so sure because I don't.
How old is your little brother?
My little brother, he's just now making 21.
Okay, so he's an adult.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so when your mom stopped at her mom's house, did you get out of the car?
Yeah, I was sitting on the porch. Yes, ma'am.
Did you ever go in the house?
No, ma'am.
You were just waiting for your mom to come out so she could take you to the next place you needed to be.
Yes, ma'am.
And in the meantime, the parole officer had gone to your great grandmother's house to confirm that that was your address.
To be honest,
Okay, but he went to your great grandmother's house.
Yeah.
How did he know
Whenever,
at your grandmother's house?
yeah, well, whenever he went to my grandmother's house, my great grandmother's house, my grandmother called me. My great grandmother called me. When she called me, I called him.
I told him where you were.
Yeah, I told him where I was.
And when he got there, you were sitting on the porch waiting for your mom.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
And you've never been in the house.
Never one time been in the house.
And it's your assertion that at that time, you were not aware that there were children in the house.
Yes, ma'am.
How did the parole officer know that there were children in the house?
Well, whenever he pulled up, by this not being my residence, I told him that I didn't give him the right to search the house. He asked to search the house. I ain't give him the right because it wasn't my house. And I didn't know who was in there.
Right.
He still evaded and asked to go into the house. And when he went into the house, he seen the children that were there.
And then you were arrested that same day and then since?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, that's all I have.
All right, we'd like to hear from your mother, Miss Rakesha Fulton Wells. Ma'am, I think you're on mute still.
Yes, ma'am.
Here you go. Go ahead. We'd like to hear from you, please.
On the day that he was released, he went to my grandmother's house, Alma White. That's the 2003 9th Street address. I was called. We went, greeted, welcomed him home. Everything was fine. He told me he had to go to his parole officer that Friday morning. I'm the youngest of the mothers in the family, so I'm the transportation for everyone. I picked him up that morning, took him to probation and parole. He didn't get to see nobody, so they gave him an appointment to come back that Monday. So Monday morning, we got up, got him, and we attempted to get all his business taken care of. I'm incognate from back surgery. Mornings are hard for me because of the incognito. But I got up, did what I could, and went about our day. Took him to probation and parole, sat there. He went in, did whatever he had to do, came back and said he needed letters from the children, from his brothers, about his brother's children. I said, okay, fine, I can get the girls to write the letter because the grandchildren are mostly with me. Their parents work. My youngest son's in college. So I do grandma duties. But this particular day, because I had Sir and I had to do some running around with him, the kids were at my mom's house. During our running around, I had an accident and I was forced to stop to change my undergarments. I went to my mother's house, went in, cleaned up, changed. While I'm in the house, my mom tells me that the probation officer has been to my grandmother's house. Mind you, my grandmother is 98 years old. She lives by herself unless Sir is there. She told sir that the parole officer had been there. She didn't get to the door in time to answer him, that he was seen on the camera. So sir called the parole officer and told him, look, I'm at my grandma's house with my mama. We trying to do the stuff that you needed me to do. He said, yeah, I'm on my way. Within moments, the man pulled up, got out of his truck, and walked up onto the porch with me and sir. We would have been moving around by it before then if he hadn't said he was on his way. When he got out, he greeted us and he said, yeah, I remember you. I came to your house and to prove your address, and was deemed that he couldn't stay with me because I had the grandgirls. I said, yes, sir, I'm the same one. I'm his mother. He said, okay, come show me around. He was speaking to sir at that point. So sir told him, I don't live here. I can't let you in somebody else's house. He said, yeah, come on. The officer opened the door and walked in. No knock, no nothing, just walked in. My mother was sitting on the couch, and it was the day of my 5-year-old's birthday. She was opening her gifts in the middle of the floor. The parole officer stepped in the house, seen the kids, and told her, turn around and put your hands behind your back.
Right, yes, ma'am, and we know what happened after that. Can you wrap it up for us, please, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. On the day in question, we did everything that I thought we could do. If I hadn't had an accident, we would have never been at my mother's house. Sir never went in. He stayed in the car, in the driveway, and on the porch. I tried to explain that to the officer. I even tried to give him the letters that he had requested.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Thank you for being with us this morning. Mr. Fox, is there anything you'd like to say to us before we turn it over to Mr. Smith?
At the end of the day, all I just want to be known is I'm just trying to get back home to my family. That's it. My family leave me, and I'm just trying to get back to my people. That's it.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Smith.
Yes, I'll be extremely brief. I was retained to represent him in other matters. He had an out date of March 22nd. I was friends with his great grandmother, Alma White. She's 98 years old. I said, I think he's coming home then. They didn't release him. I inquired as to why. They said he couldn't live. He had listed his great grandmother's house as where he was going to reside. They said, you can't live there. It's within 1,000 feet of, he's a tier 1, mind you. It's within 1,000 feet of children. I filed a motion because I didn't think that was so. We had a hearing. His parole officer at that time came in and agreed, said there was nowhere within 1,000 feet that there were children. So he could live there. When he did go to live with his great grandmother. And then he was picked up 2 days later, I think it was 2 days later, and on the instance y'all just heard. But interestingly, he's a tier 1, so that in the past he could be around children as long as he was supervised, if there was an adult there. But during this particular time, for some reason, he had to get letters and things of that nature, which is what they were trying to do. He certainly didn't violate. He didn't have contact with any children, in as much as he never went into the house. They were on the other side of a wall, and I don't know how that would constitute contact. That's why I filed a motion to clarify what the actual terms were.
All right, thank you, sir. Any other questions?
No.
All right, I think we're ready to vote. Mrs. Jackson.
Mr. Fox, obviously you were trying to do the right thing. The parole officer wouldn't have even have been at your grandmother's house if you hadn't called and informed me. I believe your testimony. I believe your mom. And it's unfortunate that this matter was handled in the way that it was. But my vote today would be do not revoke and return to supervision.
Mr. Roche.
Mr. Fox, do not revoke, return to supervision.
And Mr. Fox, I do agree. That is my vote as well. Do not revoke, return to supervision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
have a blessed morning.
Thank you.
Hey, this guy has a long history, rap sheet. Maybe that's what his attorney meant by him being retained for a different matter. But here's the one he's charged on now, 717 for the parole violation. Look at the, oh, these are the, and then the list just goes on and on. 616, 627, 22, 22, 623, illegal carrying of a weapon. You know, it's interesting. Some states, they'll just throw the book at you for that. And it seems in other states, there's not, like Louisiana, they don't seem to take it that harshly. I mean, it's just over and over and over again. Here's a registration offense, 2019. And it just goes on and on. 2018, a lot of battery of an officer. And that can be, I guess, you know, just resisting arrest and they hit you with other things, but who knows? Man, his poor mother, that's all I can really think about, his poor mother. But now what he was originally in for was, it seems, February 17th of 2015, a different grandmother came home and saw him in the house with her granddaughter. They don't say how old she was in this article, but that she was a teenager. And he was 20 years old. So he ran away, but they ended up catching him. Now, that information, what can it tell you? You know, maybe he's not at the typical risk, right? Was she 15? Was she 17? Was she 16? Probably not 17. I mean, so maybe he's not like the typical offender in that sense. Like, he's not a risk to being around children. It is interesting, though, that the parole officer was at the house, and probably because of his rap sheet, he's kind of extra cautious around him being there. And I think you give the parole officer credit for it, for being extra cautious. But at the same time, you might argue maybe he had a vendetta against him. Should he have been locked up for this, for violating? He told the parole officer he was going to be there. I don't know. This is an interesting one for me, because clearly they were not potential victims, right? But I do like to see them being extra strict rather than extra lenient. But they allowed him back out, and it seems he has a lot on his plate. But you tell me. I know that but I do think this is a different kind of case. Remember, we just saw the attorney earlier. I'm doing these kind of out of order. We initially saw this attorney, and then we had the second case where he then kind of sat in.
Okay, so this was actually a blast to the past, September, and maybe you remember this hearing, maybe you don't. It was like slapped in the middle of like a 2-hour montage of hearings, but he's back. He's back for another revocation hearing just a few months later. So we're going to go jump into that one. And this is actually, I found to be one of the more intriguing cases, very different than what we've normally seen. We get to meet his parole officer, and I got to tell you, I found it to be pretty fascinating. But with that, let's jump in.
Good morning, Mr. Fox.
Good morning. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm not happy though. I did not expect to see you back here.
I know.
Well, let me stop. Let me refresh your memory. Back on earlier when you came up for your first revocation hearing. You had left your parole officer, your mom was taking you to take care of some of your responsibilities. She had a situation that necessitated her stopping in her mother's house. There were children present in the house. There was no indication that you were in the house or knew children were inside. And so we chose not to revoke you and returned you to supervision.
Yes, ma'am.
So on that date, that last alleged violation, you knew that that was a residence that you could not be at, correct?
Yes, but this is my defense. Whenever we finished the thing, I had written letters given to y'all. Y'all had the written letters, and y'all never told. I thought whenever y'all reinstated me that the letters were accepted. That's what I thought.
Mr. Fox, we made it very clear to you that the reason you were not being revoked is because of the emergency situation where your mom had to stop at that
Yeah.
house.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
you had not gone into that house, and that there was no indication that you knew there was children in that house at that time. There was no reference made to any letters that anybody wrote giving you permission to be around their children. The only issue we dealt with was the fact that your mom stopped at that house, you remained outside, you never went into the house. And for those reasons, we did not feel that you were in violation. We did not discuss in any respect with you your ability to be around children, because that was not for us to do.
Well, I did ask about that the last time we were here. I just thought the letters were accepted. I had the letters. My lawyer has the letters. Still had the letters.
And about the letters, but again, we only addressed the fact that you never went in the house and your mom was the one who stopped you. We never told you, well, if you get a letter, you can go back, because that's not, what the situation is. Also, the house that you were at was a house that was within 1,000 feet of a place you couldn't go. So you couldn't have been in that residence anyway.
The reason why, the reason with the text messages, he's saying that in my text messages that I was at that house. I never was at this house. I told someone that I was staying there because I didn't want them to know where I live. And he went off that text message. Now,
And why would you do that?
because I have people that I don't want to know where I stay at.
Well, then why would you be texting them anything? If that's the case.
I'm in a neighborhood.
Mr. Fox. What about the picture of you holding a newborn?
The picture of me holding a newborn is my little sister just had her baby, and I went to the hospital with her to see the child. And from what I was thinking was that the letters had been accepted whenever I came. That was done that weekend. He's saying when I went up there on the 4th that it was taken on the 4th. No, I had received that picture on the 4th because my sister sent me the picture of me holding my newly born niece on the 4th. I thought the letters had got accepted. Whenever he come to me, whenever I went to report it to him, he told me that they worked. Weeks passed from me coming to see him, and a situation happened where he ended up going through my phone and seeing the picture. I ain't never was around him after he told me I couldn't be around nobody, be around the children. It's just, I thought that the letters were accepted. And I got the letters. My lawyer still has the letters, and I've been trying to get the letters accepted.
What about the social media accounts?
I didn't know that I could not be on those. I'm gonna be honest with you. I honestly didn't know about me not being able to be on social media. If I'd have known I wasn't able to be on social media, I wouldn't have been on it. But I didn't know. I honestly didn't know, because every time we had the conversation with my parole officer, it was about the children, because this is my family I live with. These are people I'm going to see if I want to be home. I want to be able to be around them.
Mr. Fox, again, that doesn't allow you to do what the law says you can't do, even if it is your family.
Well, I'm not trying to break no laws. I report. I come see him. I'm working. I'm out the way. I'm not trying to come back to jail. I'm trying to be a productive member in society, and I'm how I'm feeling with the situation. The stipulations that have been given to me are obscene, because I'm on parole for a gun, and I'm not on parole for being a registered sex offender. When I got to being a registered sex offender, I was a tier 1. They told me, no, if I had to register for the next 10 years, they ain't never told me about these speculations. And the last couple of times I've been on parole, I haven't had to deal with these controversies. You know what I'm saying? Even though I was an addict and was in the streets, I'm not like that. And it's like I'm getting pulled back every time behind me being around my family, me trying to be a productive member in my family and in society.
All right,
Ms. Jackson, may I speak?
yes,
What we're experiencing here is he doesn't really know what the term, yes, he signed a contract, but the case law is that whatever the judge tells you at the sentencing is what the terms of your probation are. That's Louisiana versus Shelby Ducote. But here, I want to just, if I may, I was retained on this case a year ago, even longer than that. It was a murder in Catahoula Parish. I went. It was in the jail cell. It was obvious that Mr. Fox wasn't involved. It was on film, so they reduced it to a misdemeanor, and he was ready to get out of jail. Well, I tell his 99-year-old great grandmother, Alma White, he's getting out of jail. His out date comes and goes. He's not out. They say that he can't live where he was living, which was with Alma White, because that's within 1,000 feet of where children are. I file a motion to clarify that, since I go to the spot and I don't see anything like that anywhere around. So I file a motion to clarify the terms of the probation. Well, we go to the hearing, and lo and behold, the probation officer shows up and says, I stand corrected. There is nothing within 1,000 feet. So I have the judge sign an order that he's going to get out. He still doesn't get out. I call probation. It turns out the probation officer that was on the case, he quit. He was no longer with them. And my client's out in 2 weeks longer after I got a hold of his supervisor, and ultimately Sirdarrean got out. When he gets out, and his mother will address this, he was only out. He got a job. He reported to the sex offender place. He didn't go in the house. We're talking about the incidents where he didn't go in the house. He's out front, and he gets picked up then. Well, at that point, we had submitted, and you have the letters for him to be around his nieces and nephews signed by their parents. But this is where I think we're all running into trouble. There's a contract which he signed, which I don't think is any good to begin with. What the law is what the sentencing judge tells them his sentence is. They can say they incorporate the contract into the sentence, but that's not what the case law says. All we need is, moreover, he's a tier 1 sex offender. The crimes that he committed it's not some type of predacious sex offense. It's a person holds him out to be 21 years old and it consents. It's not a what I would call a predacious situation. Now we got him where he can't
He's trying to get a job. He has a job. He's trying to do the right thing. He wants to be with his family. When I first met him, he said he had to get back in touch with his, 5-year-old daughter who he hadn't been in touch with. Now you're telling me he can't see her when he could all before this. And the time he was on probation before, all of this was okay. And now all of a sudden, these rules and things are he's not isn't exactly sure what the terms of the probation are. That's what he's trying to tell you, I think. And what I'd like to do today is, if we can, let's meet out what exactly are the terms of his probation, whether or not he can be around children and things of that nature at a tier 1. I mean, he hasn't picked up a new crime. He hasn't been charged. He has refrained from criminal activity. The picture of him and the case I'm citing, Shelby Cody versus Louisiana, very similar. A child they take a picture of someone in an egg knocking contest with a child, and they say, "Oh, well, that's in violation." He's doing his best, but he has to know what it is that he's supposed to do.
All right, Mr. Fox,
Yes, ma'am.
where do you live?
I live.
Who lives at 2?
My great grandmother, Alma White, and me, myself.
How long have you been living there?
I've been living there since I came out the womb. It's the first house I ever.
You've always lived with your great grandmother for the most part.
The only time I did not live with her was when I first caught this. When I caught the charge that made me a sex offender. I was staying on 425-15, and that's my mother's house, and that's the other house that I was staying at, and that's the thing that's conflicting me here with probation and parole. That's the house that my mom stays at. That's my mother. You can see that's my mom's house. That's not who I stay with, but I go to a house seldomly to take care of duties for, wash a car, stuff like that. But I stay with my great grandmother.
Okay. All right, Mr. Renata, that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Is Officer Norman with us still?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you clarify? My information shows that was denied as a break because of the Alexandria Teen Activity Center. Is that correct?
No, ma'am. I believe the 2 was actually the address he was supposed to be living at.
Address that I live at.
You stop talking. Because this is the proposed residence located at 2 Street, Alexandria, is 988 feet from the prohibited entity. This was in February of this year.
Yes, ma'am. If you bear with me 1 second, I'm going
This
through
is
my narrative.
it's the narrative, February 6th.
Mr. Randazza, Judge Randazza, that's the one that I filed the motion to clarify.
Sorry, let me hear from the officer, please, sir. I'm going to just get him to clarify that for us.
Well, that's why I would say you know.
Yes, ma'am. It was denied due to the Teen Activity Center.
Okay, and the attorney is saying that's the one that he filed the motion on. And I don't have that information in the record.
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
so can you speak to the violations we're talking about today?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, which any specific one or just in general, ma'am?
In general?
So Mr. Fox, when he first came to the office, when we put him in jail, I explained to him when he came in and did his intake, I thoroughly went over the sex offender contract, the social media, the juveniles, thoroughly went over that with him. The first incident happened where I arrested him. He went in front of the board, didn't get revoked. When he got out, I again thoroughly went over the contract, said, until these letters get approved by the board, you cannot be around juveniles. And I also stressed no social media. And again, here we are, you know, literally, I believe it was 2 days after he was released from the board, did the same thing.
All right, and I'm showing a signature on the sex offender contract dated, it looks like July 17th of this year. Where both you and he signed, that's when you explained it all to him?
Yes, ma'am. That was the first, his initial intake. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the discussion? Mr. Norman?
No, ma'am. Other than all conditions were thoroughly gone over, I could not be any more specific about the instructions for the sex offender contract, and Mr. Fox just continues to do as he pleases.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Norman, where do you think he's supposed to live?
Ma'am?
Where do you think he's supposed to live? Is he supposed to be homeless?
Do I think he's supposed to be homeless?
If he can't live with his grandmother, he can't live in the other house, then where do you propose that he live?
Well, there's sex offender housing in Alexandria. I mean, it obviously costs money, but I mean, we have numerous sex offenders all throughout Alexandria. There's plenty of places to
Did you
live.
discuss that with him?
I told him about him, but he said he didn't have any money at the time.
So, are you currently his supervising officer?
Yes, ma'am.
Has he been working?
Ma'am, he was not out of jail long enough to really, I would say, find a stable job. He told me he was kind of working odd jobs, and I have no reason to believe he wasn't.
Was he paying fees?
Ma'am, I don't believe he was ever out of jail long enough to even really start paying.
And I assume the same thing for having been arrested for any new criminal offenses other than what we're dealing with today.
Yes, ma'am, correct.
You know, we put people with sex offenders and offenses in such difficult situations that we make it difficult for them to succeed. We cut them off from their family because they're children in their household. We restrict where they can live. I mean, we kind of put up barriers that make it almost impossible for a person to succeed.
Ma'am, I mean, no disrespect, but they committed a crime.
I
And I believe,
understand that, sir. I don't need you to tell me that. I understand that.
yes, ma'am. And as I've stated, I've supervised sex offenders in Rapides Parish alone for approximately 2 years now. And we have, I mean, I can't tell an exact number, but tons of sex offenders that find valid residences in Alexandria or surrounding areas.
All right, that's all, Mr.
And the questions?
Questions? All right, Mr. Fox, is there anything you'd like to say before we turn it back over to Mr. Smith? You're on mute. Can you add?
Yeah, I have one thing to say. All I'm trying to do is be home. All I'm trying to do is not be in jail. I've learned my lesson. I've learned my lesson with being here. I'm not trying. I was working. I did have a job. I was working at Popeyes. He knows this. I'm all I'm trying to do is just go home and be with my family. That's it. I'm not trying to be a criminal. I'm not trying to weigh y'all or sway y'all. All I'm trying to do is go home. That's all I'm trying to do, and go home and stay home and be a productive member in society. And it seems like the person y'all have over me is not with that. I see it. You can see it yourself. I'm trying to work here. He know he ain't tell me nothing about the social media. Every time I talked to this man, it was always about the kids. It was always about my family. It was always about me trying to stay out. And he has not tried to work with me now time with this. Yeah.
Mr. Fox, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I neglected to call on your people who were here, want to speak for you. So I'd like to do that at this time. Could we hear from Ms. Rakisha Wells?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay, what do you want to tell us today?
I'm his mother, and I'm the transportation. I do everything to help him succeed. I got him a job at Popeyes. Before the first revocation hearing, he was waiting on the interview to be hired. It was never a case that he did not have stable employment. His job was guaranteed. When he got out the second time, after y'all reinstated him, he went to work. He has a check here that's uncashed from his week worth of work. He went to the board to register on the base because I took him. When we went over there, they told him that he was being wrongfully locked up, that he was doing what was right. When he got arrested this time, I gave him $60 to pay for the class for the sex offenders. He had been to the office 3 times to check in, to see what was going on, to let the net know he was readily available to him. He has his personal cell phone so he could talk to him anytime he comes for a visit. We present ourselves transparent. We were told to get letters from each child's parents stating that he could be around them, that they gave consent. We gave them to the lawyer because the parole officer, after he told us all we needed was the letters, he would put them towards the board and he would get this taken care of. It never was taken care of, but we didn't know that until afterwards. Mr. Lane told us that all he needed was the letters. When I presented the letters to him, he said it was too late. He wouldn't accept the letters. We're getting crisscross signals from the authority as far as what he can and can't do. If we known that he could not be around his immediate family's children after the letters were written, we would have never done it. This is a hardship on the whole entire family because we need Sir here. My grandmother's 98. She raised her, so she feels comfortable with him being here with her. She needs someone at the house with her. I come every morning, but I have children that I'm raising. I do what I can, but Sir would be an added benefit to this family. It might even prolong my grandmother's life here. All we want is an opportunity for him to show y'all that he's actually become a civil person and is being denied every chance we get. It initially started, the man told him that he got a phone call saying that he had parked the car at the Social Security office and walked to the parole office. And that wasn't true. No one had called. He hadn't walked from nowhere. I let him off at the door. But it's always one stipulation, then another stipulation. And when he tried to adhere to them, always brushed under the rug. The last hearing, they said, don't address the letters. They have them. They have been reviewed. When y'all didn't even, no one addressed the letters. It's like it was a figment of our imagination. Sirdarrean never stayed at my house once he was released. He was getting off at 11 o'clock at night. from Popeyes. I would get out my bed, go get him from work, and bring him here to grandmother's house. The text message was between him and a female. She was trying to get to him. He told her he was at my house to keep her from coming to my grandmother's house. We don't allow traffic here in order to protect her. We don't want no one to just pull up here because a lot of times she's not able to get to the door to unlock it.
Right. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Wells. Is Ms. White going to say anything to us this morning?
She's here.
Good morning, Ms. White.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Not feeling too good, kind of nervous. Blood pressure's up because of all this trouble that's unnecessary.
Is there anything you want to say to us, ma'am?
Yes, it is. I would like for y'all, when my child is trying to do the right thing, I would appreciate if y'all would accept it and help him. My child is not a sex predator. I don't know if anybody have told you, Sugar. I don't know if you're supposed to hear this. But he was 18 years old. This lady told him she was 18 years old, and she told him that she had a house, and she wanted him to come and have breakfast and so on with her. And being 18 years old, quite naturally, your son who went to the girl had told him that. And so his grandmother and step-grandfather dropped him off at the house. The lady waved by and thought it was all right. Next thing they know, the police had come. He didn't know she was 14. He didn't know he had to have her birth certificate. I just don't know what's going on, Sugar. I'm old and I don't understand it, and it is making me sick. My blood pressure's sky high.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But trying to do the right thing. He wasn't trying to do wrong when they got him for that sex offender, because that girl lied and said she was 18. Well, the poor thing didn't know he had to have a birth certificate. He'd had it. He wouldn't have known it was the truth because they got false ones.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Sugar, that's all I can tell you. But I pray that you can help him because he's trying. He had him a job. They picked him up and took his job from him. His check is right here now. Where they paid him for the time they let him work. He could have been working. Now they got letters out for what his lawyer know all that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for talking to us today. We're gonna hear from Mr. Smith now. Mr. Smith?
So you still there, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. We're gonna hear from his lawyer now.
I'm sorry, and I'll be very brief. This is a case. This could be this could be a guy that went and served his sentence, got out. He's all about doing the right thing. This could end up being a success story where everybody says, "Hey, I knew that guy when he was a bad guy, and now look, he's doing the, he's out there." But Ms. Jackson brought some important points. Once you're in the gravity of the thing, it's impossible to get out, particularly if you don't know what the rules are. The officer shows up and goes, "Give me your phone." Just how about someone came to me and said, "Give me your phone." Went through, of course, a Sirdarrean gave it to him. He's got nothing to hide. He goes to his phone and finds a picture of him with a newborn baby. I just, he needs some assistance in getting back where he wants to be. This guy's not, you're not going to hear from him again. If you gave him another probation officer, I would ask that y'all consider reinstating him. I'd like to also, as a prophylactic, I know that his PO is going to say every time we meet, I tell him what the rules are, but I'm not so sure that the rules on a non-predatory sex offender. Why can't he be around? You've cut off, you're ruining it. I mean, you've heard his family speak. This is putting everybody out. When it could be the easiest thing in the world. He goes, he gets a job. Here's what you haven't heard. His check that he got, guess where that's going to go? Straight to probation for paying probation fees. He already has to pay $60 on that. He stayed registered all these years. He's never had an offense with the registration itself, which, as y'all know, gets harder and harder every year. They go to the legislature, whatnot. I mean, he hasn't. We helped solve a crime in Catahoula Parish. I mean, I don't know what else really this guy can do. I would hate to think. Anyway, I would ask that y'all consider reinstating him.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to call for an executive session.
Second.
We have a motion and second for executive session. I do agree. So we have a unanimous vote to convene executive session to discuss confidential matters.
Okay, I just want to jump in for a few seconds, but we'll go to the end of this. But I am in love with great grandma. I could sit and drink tea with her, I think, for days and not get bored. They don't make him like that anymore. The way that I think she outperformed the attorney. I don't know if they told you this, Sugar. It was just so classic. If your son was called up, he'd go there too. Now, again, he was 18. They say she was 13. It's he was even dropped off by his family, and like I said before, I do have some confusion because I'm pretty sure that the way the statute works is that you have to be under the age of 13 to not be allowed to hold an infant, and if it's 13 and above, that those restrictions don't apply to you. So either either she was younger than 13 but again, one never really knows in these situations what happened, but I do think that he's like I said before, is kind of my takeaway. My feeling from it is that he's probably not on that level of offenders, right? You don't need to be nervous or he's not someone who obsesses over children. But still, when you're 18 and 13, that is something that you need to be properly punished. Now, this situation with his parole officer, it does seem a little bit like he's being vindictive in a way. I don't envy his position. I think being a parole officer has got to be one of the toughest, most unappreciated jobs. And man, what do you think they're going to do? I just think this is such an interesting case. But also, I wanted to point out that, remember how we went through the records where it showed all of those offenses he had, including carrying a weapon, and that wasn't so long ago. So I'm quite confused about them saying how he's doing great and how he has a great record, and because that's just not what we saw at his prior hearing. What are they going to do? Are they going to bend the rules? Are they going to get him a new parole officer? I don't know. Let's jump ahead, and then we'll continue the unpacking from there. It was a good 6 minutes, so they were definitely doing some research or thinking over there. Let's see.
All right, Mr. Fox. I'm willing to work with you again. All right. My vote would be to do not revoke, to continue you on supervision to waive the objection to the 200 Alexandria, because it is 988 feet from a prohibited entity, the Alexandria Teen Activity Center. But I'm willing to waive that provision to allow you to live at that address. However, I am going to order that until there is an action by the board to allow you to be around children in your family or otherwise, you are not to have any contact with any children unless given specific permission by the parole board. Now, do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am. But can I ask one question?
Okay, what's the question?
What would how would I go into getting that approved?
Well, we'll handle that on our end, okay?
All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Roche.
I vote to continue until everything's approved.
Okay, and Mr. Fox, I'll vote also do not revoke, continue on supervision, and authorize the waiver of the address at 2003 9th Street. Now, you understand you cannot, no social media.
No social media, no
No
children.
children.
Yes, ma'am. I understand. That
You received 2 favorable votes. 1 vote was to continue. So today you will be not revoked and returned to supervision.
Thank you.
So that concludes our business in Rapides. We're going to sign out at 9:08. Thank you.
Okay, so they overrode the parole officer. They said, I guess, what was it, like 30 something feet close to that facility, which they said it's okay. They kind of rewrote the rules for him, and I don't disagree with it. I don't think he's a risk from what we've seen. He hasn't, he did this a long time ago when he was 18 and she was 13, and he claims to think that she was 18, and who knows? I don't know how you can possibly think a 13-year-old is 18. Maybe he thought she was 16, but of course. But I guess that's not the point, right? How will we ever know? But what I do think I can align with is that I don't think he's a risk, or he has done anything to make us believe he's a risk to holding his niece in the hospital. On the contrary, I commend him for doing that. I mean, and I do think that the parole officer punishing him for doing that by locking him back up doesn't make sense. Now, the whole idea of the social, what was it? He got him. Yeah, again, he gave, like his attorney said, he said, show me your phone. He goes to the phone. He finds nothing but the picture of him holding his niece. And that is, from my understanding, what revoked him. Or is it part of what revoked him? And also the residence. It does seem a little bit, and I do believe what the grandmother said and the mother said. I thought they put up great arguments. I do believe that they were trying to do everything right. And I do think the parole board made the right decision here, in my opinion. I do. I know it might sound shocking, but in this case, I don't think, I'll even make the argument that putting him in a residency for sex offenders would probably only increase the risk that something bad happens, versus him being with what looks like people who are really out to make sure he does the right thing and helps him and supports him. And I wouldn't want a stern talking to from his great grandmother. Man, I love her. The way that Mr. O'Shea and Miss Jackson both like had their faces in their hands while she was talking. I don't know if they were holding back laughter but it was I thought it was a very unique moment. And now with the parole officer, I do wonder what they're going to do. In my opinion, it will not be successful if he's still going to be his parole officer. The idea that he was just, that the parole board took the offender side and not his side. I didn't think he did himself any favors. I thought that his attitude was a bit rough. It almost like he came into the hearing being defensive. And he was even trying to coach Miss Jackson. And it's like, you know who Miss Jackson is? She's been practicing law before that guy's been born. And then he comes in saying that I've been doing this for 2 years. And it's like, okay, well, I assumed you would have at least said like 10 years. But, and again, he's got to have probably one of the hardest jobs there are. And I'm not faulting him for, I couldn't imagine having his job. I really couldn't. It's got to be just, I think, harder than nurses and even teachers. It's just such a, probably like who thanks you for your hard work, right? And do you think we're gonna see him again though? If we do, we'll play it here. But I am still confused about his record. We went over his record, his doc, and it seemed that he had, up until recently, a long track record of crime. So, it's almost like they got locked up on these specific violations. And again, that shouldn't be fair to him. It does seem that they are trying to do the right thing, and it doesn't seem that he did anything that should actually have concerned anyone. It was really just technicalities, which normally the board would revoke. But in this case, and this is the difference between having an attorney that seems to be passionate about this case and about doing the right thing, and a huge help by his great grandmother, and was it his grandmother, I believe. I think that made all the difference. If he came in there without the support, he would have just been revoked. But in my opinion, love to hear your thoughts on this. I know I may have surprised some of you with my outlook, but that's just how I see it. And maybe we'll do couple more hearings. And thank you, Richard, for providing all this information.